PMI has a new Disciplined Agile workshop. Today's topic for all things Disciplined Agile. I'm Joshua Barnes, and today I'm joined by Curtis Hibbs, Agile thought leader at PMI and part of the DA team. So Curtis, if you want to give a brief introduction.
Yes, hi. Yeah, my name is Curtis Hibbs. I have been involved in lean and agile, like all my life. It seems like really early on. I mean, I got involved with lean in the early 1990s, and agile, of course, came out of that in the later 1990s and was coined agile in the early 2000s. And so I've been part of this. I've been coming along for the ride ever since, and it's really gratifying to me to see how much progress that we've made, and how, in the beginning, we had to convince everybody that we had a better way to do things, but now it's kind of mainstream and sought after. So that it's very gratifying to have chosen this to be on the right side of history.
Yeah, and speaking of a bit of history, right? It's been a little while since PMI has put out a new workshop for DA, and I think that the wait that we've had is going to be well worth it for not only this workshop that we're going to talk about today, but just the future versions of this workshop and some of the other things that I think we'll see coming. So a little bit on the background of where and how we got to this new workshop, which is DA for Teams. One of the things today, I put out an article on this, and so I'll kind of recap a little bit of what was also in that article. What we've seen with DA is it's a great starting place, right? So it's obviously flexible. It's got multiple different types of life cycles, so approaches that you can choose from. It's got probably the most comprehensive knowledge base for agile and lean practices. It's not a prescriptive framework, right? And kind of on and on. So it is a really great starting place for organizations and for teams to create a way of working that's fit for purpose. It's also a good one if you're possibly using an approach that isn't really working for you. So you could abandon, you could move away from what you're doing and look to DA to take a fresh start or kind of take your lessons learned and move into something new. But you don't have to. And that's one of the things that I don't think that there's been enough awareness of is you can use DA with an existing approach. If you're using a framework and you're getting benefit from it, using a framework, you're not maybe getting the benefits that you kind of expected or hoped. You can look to DA for some of the things that'll help you maybe, right, improve that approach to fill some of the gaps from a process perspective. I mean, we know teams are different, types of work are different. We have enhancement teams, we have maintenance teams, we have teams that are maybe working in a more large product where you need multiple teams, maybe you need a scaled approach, right? A teams of team approach. Maybe you're not doing a digital product, maybe you're in another area of the organization. So there's lots of different ways that people need to approach getting their work done. And one of the things we can do is obviously use DA for that. So this course, and I'll let Curtis cover a little bit of sort of this background and design as well. But
yeah, before you get into the course specifically, let me just excuse me. Let me just add that so I see DA as kind of a godsend to agile practitioners and agile coaches, because usually what has happened, in the old days, which weren't the old days, that really weren't very long ago, was that people implemented and used agile practices based on what they were exposed to already. And so, or what they know somebody that was exposed to something, that sort of thing. A lot of word of mouth, a lot of individual articles written, but nobody really had a handle on the entire breadth of the agile book of knowledge, if you will. Right. And that's what DA actually is. It has curated all of the known practices that other people have used, both good and bad, and not only curated them into one place where they're easy to find, but also in generally kind of ranked them in terms of what the trade-offs are when you might use one technique over another one. And this knowledge is invaluable to people and teams and organizations. And I'm really proud to be a part of the team that is working on this. So I just wanted to put that out there as a background for those that aren't really quite sure what this Disciplined Agile is. I mean, it's a lot. It can be viewed in a lot of ways as a lot of things, but the way I like to view it personally is as a knowledge base.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that is pretty prevalent, right, is obviously Scrum and the scaled approaches that use Scrum is very prevalent out in the marketplace, right? So many teams and organizations are using them to get to various levels of benefit. So one of the things for this workshop was the recognition that there are a lot of teams that are using a Scrum-based approach. So why not have a workshop that helps them understand how to, again, use Scrum theory, or to whatever degree they're currently doing that with, but take a look at what are some of the things that maybe aren't going so well for them. What are some of the things that they need to fill in addition to what they're going to find either in the Scrum guide or in the Scrum class, or maybe even to what their Scrum masters know. So Curtis, how about sharing a little bit on sort of what we're doing in this workshop to address that?
Well, I think to me, one of the most exciting things that we're doing in this workshop is something that we already do in the Value Stream Consultant workshop and the DA coaching workshop, which is you leave the workshop not just having been exposed to new ideas and new material, but you actually leave the workshop with an actionable improvement backlog. In other words, you work on your own issues. So this team class is designed not for individual people from different teams to all come together and take the workshop. This class is designed for a team to attend the workshop as a whole so that they can work on what their own issues and pain points are. And so that the facilitator of the workshop can lead them through using the DA browser and knowledge base to help them find possible solutions or ways to address their issues and pain points. And so it's not theoretical, it's very practical. By the time you get done, you've got an actual improvement backlog that you can start as a team working on to improve your way of working.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most exciting things is that this instead of using a case study, instead of having, again, individuals that sign up for a public course, this is a workshop designed for teams to attend, right? As much as the team, as much of the team members as possible, and really take a look at their unique situation, right? The context that they're working in. And again, what are the things that they're doing and they're doing well and they want to keep doing, but what are some of the things that, again, they're struggling with, things maybe they're ready to maybe evolve to something new, right? So being able to have a tool to assess that and to use the DA knowledge base to be able to look for candidate options that they want to adopt, right? Form an improvement backlog, be able to look at the ordering of those practices, the priority, the benefit that they're going to get, things they want to experiment with, is so different than the majority, I think, of the other courses that we see, right? A lot of them are geared to not only teach you something, but also prepare you to take a certification exam. And there's great benefit in that. But a workshop like this is quite different. The other thing that I think is, that Curtis, you touched on is, this is a workshop that is facilitated by an expert consultant. So this isn't where we've got instructors that are going through and again, are taking you through a very step-by-step sort of set of slides. There are no slides. The entire workshop is done on a virtual whiteboard, right? Using Miro, and you have an expert facilitator, right? A consultant that's guiding you through the identification of some of your challenges, some of your impediments, and then looking at some of these candidate topics. So one of the things that, I'm fortunate I get to work with Curtis just about every day. And, we've talked about like this workshop and some of the quotes that we've got in some of the other courses. And there's the quote, a lot of quotes in the DAVSC course. And one of them talk about, right, if you teach somebody how to fish, right, you're preparing them in a very different way. And that to some degree, or maybe a lot of degree, is what we're doing in this workshop, right? We're teaching teams how to go about continuous improvement. Preparing them for how to use a knowledge base. And granted, it's a big knowledge base, right? I mean, there's a lot of practices in there. But we also talk about the DA knowledge base just like Wikipedia. If we added another 1 million topics to Wikipedia, would it make it any harder to use? No, because you know how to navigate it. That's a big part also of what we focus on in this workshop is how do you navigate, how do you find relevant information within the DA browser? So I'm going to take a quick look here, and it's good to see some of the comments that are coming through, and I'll put one up from one of the co-creators of Disciplined Agile. Scott, great to see that you're in attendance. Likely be a good idea for PMI or perhaps DA practitioners to write up their experiences applying DA to extend frameworks such as Scrum, Safe, Less, to help make this idea that DA can be applied to improve what you're currently doing. Yeah, so if you're in a situation where you have looked to DA, you've gone through a DA course, you've attended a webinar, you've just taken it on your own to read one of the great books or take a look at the DA browser, and you're using that in a way to improve one of these other approaches, one of the industry recognized frameworks, make a comment on that. That would be a great thing to be able to see. So a few of the other things that I think are important about this workshop is that we're starting off by not only taking a look at a tool that assesses your current way of working, right? And it's very collaborative. It's designed to be very high energy, right? We want a lot of participation. We want, the team, if this is being delivered in a virtual format, something like using Zoom, right? Cameras on, lots of discussion, right? That's a big part of this. Is it's a great opportunity for teams to be able to spend some time really taking a look at the things that are causing them that friction or that drag in their process, or the systemic issues that are coming up. And I'll say it's not just the improvement backlog, and that arguably is maybe one of the biggest benefits. In addition to just the whole setup, right? The Miro board with all of the assets on it, the team gets to continue on with, right? So that's not just a set of a PDF, your student materials. It's that Miro.
Let me add a little bit to that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that there's a lot of when you're working in an agile way, whether you've just adopted practices or you've used one of these frameworks, there's a lot of moving pieces. And it's if you're using something like Scrum, for example, the moving pieces that are specified are pretty minimal, because Scrum is, for example, is expecting you to fill in the blanks with other things.
And the Scrum Guide says exactly that.
Yeah. Well,
intentionally incomplete.
One of the problems is that people don't realize how many other things there actually are.
Yeah.
If you want to get really good at it and be a high performing team, there are a lot of moving pieces, a lot of options. And one of the things that this workshop does is let me just use Scrum as the example in particular. If you're a Scrum team already, then the workshop starts off with a diagram of the Scrum lifecycle. And overlaid on that are some of the key challenges that you might be facing. You might not be, but they're there. And you get to see them all in one place and kind of laid out graphically where they tend to occur in the life cycle of a Scrum team. and it's somewhat, it's actually very educational, because you'll look at that as a team as you're trying to think about what your issues are, and you'll realize how much more there is than you were even thinking about. And you'll realize that, oh, I forgot all about that, but we actually have an issue with that. We just forget about it because we kind of sweep it under the rug, or, you know, and then and that happens at the beginning with a lot of assessment items that are overlaid on this life cycle diagram. Um,
Right.
and I don't remember now, Joshua, whether we pop them all up all at once or whether we do them in a couple layers. But the last time we talked, we did them in 2 layers. So we did the primary ones first, and then we popped up all the secondary ones next. And that's a real eye opener for people who don't really realize how many things there are that you might want to consider.
Yeah. So if if you think about, right, like the visualization, right? So having the Scrum life cycle, right, that is there with all of the 3 roles, right, the events and the artifacts. And a lot of times we'll see, Scrum teams, right, and they'll say, yeah, we're doing sprint planning pretty well, and then we ask some questions, right? Well, do you ever have carryover work? Yeah, we have carryover work. And see, there's not almost never is there a one-to-one relationship. Like, you have carryover work, it's always because of this reason, right? Or you start to uncover a little bit, like it could be something such as pushed work, right? You have unplanned work that keeps getting pushed onto the team. It could be maybe you're not really in a good state of readiness with your stories. Maybe you have an absentee product owner. You have a product owner that's in a title position and they just don't have enough time and they're not delegating. So you've got not enough information to really go through and adequately understand what work you can pull into that next time box, right? Your next sprint. So there's a multitude of these potential things that we want to explore a little bit more. And then we use the DA browser to take a look at options that might potentially be able to start solving some of those challenges, right? So that's how that to me also is like, that's the gold, not only for the team, but for the team scrum master, right? We're kind of giving the, bit of the keys to, these are some systemic issues, and here's how to start taking a look at how you might be able to make an improvement. But that's just the beginning, right? Once you understand a little bit of this is almost like a one-day retrospective, right? I mean, it's really looking at how your work is going and what you can do to make some improvements there. And it's not just internal to the team. Now, there is a lot of focus there, but it's also about, do you have challenges outside of the team, people from a shared services perspective? Do you have a lot of dependencies you need to manage? Do you have risks that aren't really attended to very well? Right? Is scope not managed? So there's a lot of the additional things that are really built into DA, right? Really great guidance there. That, again, to Curtis, your point, yeah, if it's something you're dealing with every week, every sprint, every project or quantity of work you're doing, sometimes that's just business as usual, and you don't really start to think maybe there are things either we can do to change that, or start capturing some of the information, some of the data in a different way to shine the light on it more, to say, this is what's happening, right? If we don't get out of this pattern, we're always going to have this bit of inefficiency or this bit of carryover work or these quality issues, or right on and on, all the things that we might find.
Yeah, I should also mention that even though we're this first version of the Teams workshop out of the gate is using Scrum, because that's probably the most prevalent framework used out there. But we have plans for doing versions with other starting points for teams that might be using Kanban or SAFe or less. It doesn't change the back end of the workshop. It just changes the front end, which is the life cycle diagram that you start with and the kind of issues that you run into.
Yeah. Let's see. So, great introduction. How does this workshop address casual relationships? Does the DA for Teams workshop expect to be run on a regular basis, and the improvement backlog created subject to constant review? Do you want to answer that, Curtis, or would you like me to?
Sure. Sure. So this is actually really important, and that is that it doesn't, having an improvement backlog doesn't, all by itself, doesn't really do anything for you. You have to have a mechanism in place to work that backlog. And there has to be a regular cadence that you go through as a team and decide what you're going to work on next out of the improvement backlog, which is separate from your day-to-day work, right? And part of that regular improvement cadence is going to be putting more things on the backlog that you've identified or that you've uncovered as you know, presumably you're going to work on your highest priority items first. So you will uncover more issues as you go along. So it's a never-ending process. And as Joshua already mentioned, you know, it's part of the continuous improvement process.
Yes, and there was one very important thing that Curtis was adamant on getting into the workshop, which is sort of tied to the improvement backlog, right? Is somebody that is taking ownership of it. So do you want to give some thoughts on why that is so important, Curtis?
Yes. Well, if nobody is owning it, if nobody is responsible for the improvement backlog, then it's just real easy for nothing to get done.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, if it's important enough to do, it's important enough to give somebody responsibility for it. It doesn't mean it has to be permanent. I mean, you could do a rotating thing if it turns out to be a lot of work, but somebody needs to be responsible for it.
Yeah. Okay, so we're kind of at our planned time. We're planning these live streams for about 20 minutes. So if you're watching this in real time, or if you happen to be watching it on replay, post any other questions that you've got. Curtis and I are going to consider doing a second live stream to answer any questions, maybe show a little bit of the content, maybe interact with some of the content that we've got in the Miro board to just give a little bit better kind of view into what the workshop contains. And what I'll also be doing is I'll post the link to the PMI DA microsite. There's a little more information you can find on the webpage there, as well as a form to fill out. It's just name and your email address to get a little more information from PMI on potentially having one of the workshops run at your organization. As always, thank you everyone for is in attendance. Curtis, thanks a lot for joining us today. And Curtis, anything else you'd like to wrap up with?
No, not really. I think we covered the major points. I'll look forward to a follow-up to answer questions. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, excellent. All right, thanks everyone. Looking forward to any questions or comments, and we'll see you on the next episode of All Things Disciplined Agile.